Hi, Oscar.
Hey, Dr. Rodriguez.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
So, welcome to our roundtable discussion. This session will be recorded for the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice and will be shared tomorrow on Sunday at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time, which will be a roundtable discussion with other guests. It's a pre-recorded session because of an error on my part for today. This session is titled Standing with Migrants, Displaced Persons, Refugees and Families of Deported, a personal testimony on family separation. The title comes, at least a portion of it, comes from the Universal Apostolic Preferences. My name is Dr. Rodriguez. I'm the director of the Center for Service and Justice at Loyola High School of Los Angeles, and I'm joined here with Oscar Garcia, class of 2020, a recent graduate from Loyola High School. It looks like we have a guest. Hi, Eileen.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, and you?
Thank you for joining us this evening. I made a mistake. It was supposed to be earlier in the day, and I was following my Pacific Standard Time, so I'm so sorry. But thank you for joining us. Yeah. So, Eileen, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and record this session, and we'll be live tomorrow, Sunday at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time or 3:30 Eastern Time. But you're more than welcome. Stay in the session and certainly participate in any of the questions that you may have or discussion. My name is Dr. Rodriguez. I'm the director of the Center for Service and Justice at Loyola High School, Los Angeles, and I'm joined here with Oscar. And the title comes from the Universal Apostolic Preference. It's a portion of the title, but this really is about Oscar's story. Next slide here. How do I go slide? Oh, there we go. I thought we'd start off with this as a kind of a centering piece. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink, and I was a stranger and you welcomed me. The photograph to the right of the screen there is an image of the security fence or the border wall in Nogales, Sonora, and Nogales, Arizona. And it's part of the immersion programs that a number of the different Jesuit schools participate through the Kino border initiative. But we participate in their conference each year around Thanksgiving. But I think that's a powerful image to share, especially as Oscar will share a little bit of his story. Oscar's story came to us. I've known Oscar, and I'm going to let Oscar introduce himself in a little bit. I've known Oscar for 4 years. He was a student of mine at Loyola High School, I think as a 9th grader, and he was part of our first generation program entering into Loyola High School. But I got to know him really well and his family. And the more I got to know him, the more I began to understand his lived experiences, especially for his father, who is an immigrant. And on October the 10th, 2019, our provincial, Father Scott Santa Rosa here in California and throughout Jesuit West, the province, he called for a day of advocacy for rights of immigrants and refugees. And at that time, all the Jesuit provincials in the United States and Canada had scheduled a meeting with Acting Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. And they really wanted to meet with him and have a robust conversation, or rather discussion and an ask of ways in which they can be treating immigrants better, especially during this family separation time. And in October 10th, he called for all Jesuit works, all parishes to come together to do something around this area. And knowing Oscar, knowing his family, I thought Oscar would have been the great individual to share his story, and he was. He's had the most lived experience around family separation, and he was able to talk to it certainly better than anyone else can. And so it became a very powerful experience for our community, where we gathered as many people who could fit in the chapel. And it was there that Oscar shared his story. And at that same day, we also had an opportunity for individuals, for students, for adults to sign a letter to the Department of Homeland Security But we also, couched that day with the meeting with our representative here in California, our congressperson. So it was really a day of advocacy, but it's Oscar's story that prompted everything. There we go. And so I'm going to let Oscar introduce himself. The image to the right is our chapel and what we had set up for that day. If you're familiar with the Kairos retreat at different Catholic high schools, this really became a moment, almost a type of very opening spiritual experience where he shared deeply about his life story. So, Oscar, you could introduce yourself and the floor is yours.
All right. So good afternoon. My name is Oscar Garcia, and I'm a graduate of Loyola High School, class of 2020. I was called here today to tell you the story of an incredible human being, which is my dad. Due to war, poverty, and overall just the chance at a better life, he fled from El Salvador to the U.S. at the age of 19. Before he left, his mother made a point to give him a final goodbye because she knew it would be the last time she'd see her son. Upon entering the United States, he set out to achieve the American dream of creating a family, obtaining economic stability, and doing it honestly. The United States was built on the ideology that men of integrity, hard work, and faith will succeed regardless of their ethnic and socioeconomic background. This man perfectly embodies these traits. He's the most honest and kind individual I will ever meet. He works hard to provide for his family and does so with humility and integrity. He manages to do this through his unbreakable faith in God, and he exemplifies what a true American is. This man is Oscar Garcia, and if you didn't already guess, he's my father. As many of us are aware, immigrants are unfairly portrayed in the media and have been stigmatized by certain members currently in office. Undocumented immigrants are deemed lazy criminals who are here for the sole purpose of stealing jobs of American citizens. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my father has done the job citizens don't want to do. He is not a criminal and definitely not a lazy immigrant. He's worked twice as hard to obtain the things he has and is a primary example of what every American citizen should be. For a nation that promises liberty and justice for all, nothing about my father's journey has felt free or just. He's tried countless times to obtain his citizenship. During his first attempt at citizenship, someone forged his signature on important legal documentation. This led to his first order of deportation. The next time he tried to apply for citizenship, he was scammed out of thousands of dollars. For 20 years, my dad was forced to settle in the U.S. with the TPS, which stands for Temporary Protection Status, given to him for leaving a war-stricken country. During this time, he met my mother, Erica Mora, and spent the next few decades creating our family and striving for economic stability. Through his incredible work ethic and ambition, he's managed to buy a home, send both his children to prestigious private high schools, and is currently working towards putting my sister and I through college. That is not an easy task for anybody, but imagine how difficult it is for someone who isn't a citizen. This man has defied all odds and has continuously proven he is worthy of citizenship. Like I mentioned earlier, one of my father's strongest qualities is his unbreakable faith. This man has never given up on his mission to become a citizen. Truthfully, this past year, all hope seemed lost. The cancellation of TPS was announced, and my family lived more in fear than ever. I thought to myself, it's not fair. This man has worked harder than anyone for 20 years, and in a few months will be forced out of the country. He's created a life here and actively contributes to this country. It's simply not fair. My dad, however, never lost sight of his objective. He filed for citizenship once again, but sadly he was denied and received the second order of deportation. My sister, mother, and I constantly worried about the fate of our family. Losing my father meant losing our entire way of life. My dad is the head of the household. If deported, we would most likely lose our home. My sister would have to stop going to school to help support our household, and my mother would be forced to get multiple jobs in an effort to keep my family afloat. I would not be able to pay tuition and would probably have to leave my school and get a job as well. That's just the financial aspect of the situation. The emotional toll this would and has already taken on my family is immeasurable. I truly consider my dad my best friend, and I wouldn't even want to imagine the possibility of not having him around. But it was the reality we were facing. During this time, my mom attempted suicide due to the stress of it all. I haven't been able to properly process what we've been dealing with. Through all the bad, the one constant in my life was my dad's positivity and strong faith. Not once did he lose hope, and he continues to push through the obstacles thrown at our family. Thanks to Dr. Rodriguez, we contacted Carlos Cruz, a truly inspiring immigration lawyer. He was very honest with us and informed us that the removal of my dad's orders of deportation were highly unlikely. He was not dissuaded. With the determination and prayer of all those involved, both his orders of deportation were appealed, which now allows us to further advance in the citizenship process. Our journey, however, is far from over, but I know that our prayers will be answered. My dad has a long road ahead of him, but like a true American, he will stop at nothing to accomplish what he set out to do. I hope you gained a little insight on the life of an undocumented immigrant, and I thank you for listening.
So one of the things that, thank you, Oscar. Something that emerged as a result of Oscar's story is, and this is what it means to become an ally, to work and closely and encounter an immigrant, and to become an immigrant ally is getting to know their stories and their families. And because of our connections with different alumni and different resources that our school community has, we were able to access an immigration attorney, someone who would take on Oscar's case and his family's case, and would take it on and fight for Oscar. And it was a very emotional period, I know, certainly for him and for his mother and for me, because we were all caught up on wanting to make sure Oscar Sr. was taken care of, because we had grown so close to certainly Oscar Jr. and his sister and his mother, and we wanted nothing but the best. And so it became something of a type of a triage, or a type of a community that rallied around him. The challenge there is it became a very insulated community that was supporting him. And I think by Oscar sharing his story, it opened up this awareness, especially in other young people, that we have individuals in our midst who are suffering because of unfair, unjust immigration laws, especially family separation, both at the border, but even orders for deportation. Currently, in the news, we're hearing that there are over 500 children that will not be reunited with their parents, that the administration has lost track of where those children are. And there certainly have been administrations, even previously to this one, who have had a series of deportations. And so Oscar's story, what it did was it highlighted, it raised a certain awareness. And so when we think about accompanying Oscar and working as allies, one question we want to consider is how can we become, how can you be an immigrant ally locally? And I'm not sure where Eileen is from, but since this conference is international, or rather national, we can certainly come out as an ally. And that's difficult sometimes, to say, I support immigrant rights. I am with our undocumented brothers and sisters. To be of service and not self-serving. And sometimes we think we may be helping, but we may not be doing the help in a way that really supports the young person or their families. The third part is to learn correct terms. This is very important, especially in a climate where language is so critical. How do we identify with an individual who's undocumented? Number 4, to get informed. There's so much information out there in terms of immigration and refugee status and credible fear and seeking asylum. It's learning the right language and learning the right information so that we can share it with individuals. in Oscar's case, I'm not an immigration attorney, but I know immigration attorneys, and having access to a law school, especially within our Ignatian family, there are plenty of Jesuit law schools. And so having access where we can gain information and provide them the good information they need so that their families can be successful. And I think that happens a lot with Latino communities. They'll think a notario or someone like that is an attorney. And there's a lot of individuals taking advantage of others, especially the most vulnerable. The fifth one is to be mindful of intersectionality. Legal status is one space that is occupied, but we also want to look at gender, at orientation, at ethnic identity. All those things are intersect their identity. And the last one is really challenging, to use our own privilege and to risk that privilege, to risk our own identity, our own legal status, and to put someone else first. To know how to do it, we want to certainly learn the facts, show up for people power. There's the ACLU has a variety of different resources, and I'll put those up there on the link for you all to see. Speak out and sign petitions. The Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice certainly has a number of different petitions we could sign. You can give your support. One of the organizations that I donate to is Kids in Need of Defense. They provide legal support, for unaccompanied minors so that they can prepare them for their day in court, so that they can remain in the United States. And lastly, volunteer time. There's different organizations where you can volunteer and provide any kind of service for others, different organizations, but all this depends certainly in your organization and where you're at. Let me see. There you go. And finally, there's different sites that you can visit, and then I'll open it up for questions for Oscar. These are very familiar, especially if you are within the Ignatian family. Jesuit Migrant Solidarity. The migration policy.org is one that has a number of different stats in terms of migration, but all from around the world. Because when we look in Mexico and the United States, we're looking at a small portion versus looking at migration from the Middle East or the Sahara into Europe. The clinic, Catholic Clinic Legal. Let me see, there's a couple of other ones there. Loyola Immigration Justice Clinic, that's here in Los Angeles. And there certainly are a number of books that you can read. You can visit the Kino Border Initiative, and I think a number of our Jesuit schools do participate in immersions there. Enrique's Journey by Sonia Nazario. She's a two-time Pulitzer Prize winning author who writes the story of a young man looking for his mother, but also goes into the intricacies of immigration policy. Something in Between Us by Melissa de la Cruz, The Radius of Us. These are really books more for young people, which are great, but they also tell the story of migration. The Line Becomes a River was written by a former Border Patrol agent. He lives in Arizona, and he has presented oftentimes at the Kino Border Initiative. Eileen, or do you have any questions? I'm looking at the time. I want to be respectful of time. But do you have any questions for Oscar specifically?
No, I don't. I just really like this story. It was really, I don't know how you'd say it, heart touching. I don't know how you would say it, but your story was amazing, and your dad seems like such a hard worker, all of you guys, and thank you overall for sharing your story. And the websites, Mr. Rodriguez, and all of that. Thank you. But I know I don't have any questions.
What school are you from, Eileen? Or are you from a parish?
I go to Cristo Rey High School here in Sacramento.
Okay, so you are with, don't tell me her name, Cristo Rey Sacramento, Callie? No. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking out on her name. I could see her name. Who's your campus ministry or your Christian service coordinator?
Miss Javier.
Miss Javier, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you joined us. Thank you so much for being here. Oscar, do you have any last minute comments or questions or recommendations?
Nope, just thank you for listening. Thank you for participating.
Thank you. And then we have one more picture here that we can share, and that is the one on the top left is our young man at the Kino Border Initiative. And at the bottom is anything you can do on your campus. You can have an immigrants and refugees kind of information day at lunch, or there's a number of different organizations in Sacramento that you can volunteer. Certainly, there's some here in Southern California, but Kids in Need of Defense is nationwide. But you can provide all kinds of literature, and the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice is a phenomenal resource that you could just do these information sessions. One of the things that I found very powerful is when we share our stories with 7th and 8th graders and Catholic elementary schools. And sometimes that becomes just like an awakening for them. And especially depending on the types of communities you go to, they begin to reflect on their own personal stories and their own stories of their families as well. So Eileen, thank you so much for being here. Oscar, thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to share a little bit of what we did at Loyola High School, but it really was a testimony of Oscar sharing his story with all of us that began to transform and continues to transform our community towards becoming that place where we want to welcome all refugees and all immigrants, especially where Loyola High School is located in the Pico Union District, and become that center of space for those communities and for anyone just looking for a place to call their home. So thank you, everyone. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Oscar.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we'll be all set tomorrow at 12:30. Okay?
See you tomorrow then at 12. Sorry, I muted myself.